Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next Wasteless World Talks. And today we are missing our friend Kevin, but we are here for you, Bill and me. And we will discuss today again a very special topic because we will speak about the price of the price. And just let me ask you today, you are the only one whom I can ask my difficult question, Bill. So, what means if you hear a price, if you hear the word or the expression, what came to your mind?
The first thing that came to my mind was my early training in my career as an accountant and a finance person. There are many different ways when I got into marketing, there's many different ways to arrive at the price of something. And the most classic approach to pricing something is to add up all your costs and then add a little bit of margin for your overhead, for your profit, and so on, and then you have price. Um, and so that classic approach to pricing. Then there are many other a little bit more sophisticated approaches to pricing. One of them being, I remember a CEO telling me, we price by the tear in the customer's eyes. So you price it high enough so that it's causing him just a little bit of pain, but he's going to buy it anyway. And that requires um, a little bit of balance, but that's an approach to pricing. Um, so that overlooks many costs. And a good example might be in the last 50 years, America and other countries also, but America has has changed its manufacturing so that it purchases um, goods from low-cost countries such as China or Malaysia. And we abandoned many of our own factories because the price of an hour's worth of labor in China at one point was 50 cents an hour, and the price of union labor in America was $50 an hour. That's an extreme example, but the difference was huge, and it was only after we got over there and did we realize that there are many other costs that the accountants had not identified, and they're human, environmental, legal, all sorts of costs that we had not costed in. And currently, there are many factories that are coming back to the United States because after a few decades, we realized how ignorant we had been when we made the decision to go over there. And and so when you mention the price of the price, the price of the price is our ignorance and our unawareness, because we make decisions based on incomplete understanding, because we're like a child who says, "Oh, look, I don't have to pay $50 an hour anymore. I can pay 50 cents an hour, and where will that extra money will go right in my pocket." What a good decision. Let's lay off 100 workers and hire the factory over someplace else. So the price is how we have castrated ourselves. Um, there's probably better words to use than that, but what we have done to ourselves, well, another way to say it is we shot ourselves in the foot.
Uh,
But it's the same thing.
and you mentioned that at the beginning of your career, generally the price means for you something in an accounting way, in the business way. But I'm sure, and you describe it well, that it changed with the time. And I feel from our discussions that the understanding of waste, how you dive deeper and deeper every single day into the understanding of this, make it again completely different image where the financial point of view is the last one which we should care about generally because it's not so important. You know, last week, if I do remember it, or it was beginning this week, I think at the end of last week, Klaus Schwab, you know this name from, this is the CEO of World Economic Forum, says that water is not a human right. How anyone can dare to privatize something which is given by nature, something so important that the man cannot survive without it, and nothing can survive without it. And call it is not a right that we can buy it, but we cannot have it. So there are people who are trying to make price, the financial price, the profit, let's call it the profit on everything what is existing. Because what will come after the water? The air. And there has been many science fiction movies describing this and books and so on. We just laugh about it, but it is the reality. A man who is influencing half the globe generally, collecting money from the companies which join his organization, which from my point of view is criminal organization, is officially on some, it was some official event generally. He tell this. So for me, price is life generally. And it's not the financial one. Price is life. So we are right now speaking about the price of our future. And it's not a financial one. You cannot express it financially. You can do it in only in a way which humans will understand, machines will not. And this is why I think that generally, as you and I'm so happy that we started to talk together and to discuss because there is for me is a lot of discoveries from every talk with you and Kevin. So as for you, a lot of discoveries of things which you never thought about. And we just before we started, you talk about the water, and that will be quite interesting because you send me in the morning very interesting article. If you can I say something generally, your thoughts about the water and about the way how you thought about it, it was so interesting. And this is about the price.
The water is not a right. Is a mindset. Um, is an attitude toward fellow human beings that too many businessmen have. And you mentioned what's next, the air, and I would propose that the air has already been made into a commodity that can be bought and sold because we are polluting the atmosphere in so many different ways. But let's just take the factories, for example. Let's take the petroleum industry. The petroleum industry has been polluting the air for half a century more, and they knew even 30 and 40 years ago they had written internal reports that we never saw that said here is what the gas that we're putting into the air, here's what it causes. And they took that report and they buried it very, very deeply. And whenever a politician heard that story, they paid off the politician. And that report, those reports have stayed buried for all these years until recently there have been a public-centered, human-centered organizations that have done the research and they've come up with the same answer, but we knew that 50 years ago. So we talked about the water. So there's the air, there's the water, there's levels beyond that, and remind me to go back there. But talk about the water for a minute, because Uh, in the last 5 years in America, we've had very serious droughts year after year after year. In the wintertime, the snow does not come, so the tops of the mountains don't hold the snow that can be melted in the springtime and then used in the summertime. And I know that the same is true in Europe and in Africa and in almost all parts of the world. Water has become unreliable. The supply of water has become unreliable. And the beauty of talking with you and Kevin and the others over the many months is that the first step to changing anything, any of this, the first step is the awareness of the problem. And one of the chapters of our upcoming book uh, focuses, there are several chapters that focus on individual industries, and each industry is affected by waste and affects the environment and stratification and other issues differently. So it's been very interesting to look at different industries side by side. But the one new industry that we're looking at this time is the food and agriculture industry. And when I started that, I, it was it was interesting to me to be thinking about changing from a meat-based, dairy-based industry diet to a to less meat-based diet. But the drivers to me 2 years ago or 10 years ago were animal cruelty was a driver for me. Um, and 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 now after having you know talked to many people who this is their main driver in life, and they've opened my eyes in so many ways. One of the ways is the meat industry, meaning beef and poultry and dairy and so on. It's not just cruelty to animals. It's not just better diet, better nutrition by being plant-based, but in a very large way, it is the impact on climate that the meat industry, the meat and dairy industry, uh, and particular, and then there's always a ha-ha moment because people say, yeah, because cows fart, and so that's putting methane into the air. It turns out that it's not the farting as much as the burping, but be that as it may, it's a general digestive process, and so that contributes a significant amount of methane gas, um, and and that's where that one ended until I started reading about water. And so here's two little factoids. Do you know how many gallons of water it takes when you do all the math? How many gallons of water it takes to make one hamburger? Now in America, we love our hamburgers. How
Uh,
many gallons of water to make one hamburger,
to be honest, I don't know how
including
much is a gallon, but in liters, we speak about 2,500 liters.
the numbers I've heard are in that neighborhood? I've heard a gallon is about 4 liters, and how many gallons is between 4 and 18,000 gallons, which would be 16 to say 60,000 for one hamburger. For one hamburger
I know, I know. This is one of the
of ev-
numbers I'm using.
of everything that we grow in America, one half one half of everything that a farm grows goes for feedstock. That means to feed the animals. One half. So all the water that irrigation to grow that feedstock and so on. Here's another factoid. How many gallons of water, sorry for the gallons again, how many gallons of water does it take to produce one egg? one egg?
6,000.
Okay, sorry, I built that one up too much. Actually, 53 gallons for
53
one
gallons.
egg.
Okay.
Now, I had two eggs for breakfast this morning, which means I consumed the equivalent of 100 gallons of water that I used. So the interesting part and the challenging part for me is how does that translate to waste? So if it takes 53 gallons of water to make one egg, and I consume the egg and I need the nutrition that an egg brings, where does waste enter into that picture? Besides the fact that farms could be a little bit more efficient, or we could do things more efficient, so that you could say that's waste. But where does waste enter into that? And it's the same thing with you could do the same thing about air. And in fact, when we get to things like the future of the cities, what is waste really? Is it just that empty building, or is it also the way we get to work, or is it so waste becomes very broad, and the only answer there I, I, I don't want to include all that in waste because I don't want to make this book a target for everybody who wants to pick a fight with me to say, well, that's absurd that you include that in waste. No wonder your numbers are so high. You've included all this stuff, which is not really waste. It's just a cost of doing business, right? So
With
what we
other
need to do,
words, with other words, it's just the price for doing business. You use the
it's a
word
price.
cost, but it's the price. You came back to the basic.
So so like and I'm off on this tangent because in order to understand waste, we need to understand the definitions of waste. And the definitions we compare it to if if waste were a skyscraper down in New York City, skyscraper, and our understanding of waste is that skyscraper. Right now, we're in the basement. Maybe we are moving to the second floor, but what to do about waste? The awareness is so important to be aware of the various definitions and so on. And so, if we get this much understanding of waste, we will be on an elevator headed for the penthouse. We need to understand this. And once we understand this with something like the cows or the water for the meat processing plants, once we understand that, we can more fully go back to our factories with the scrap on the floor, whereas you were talking about the cables where they throw out the first 10 meters and the last 10 meters, and that just becomes waste, or the spools of cable and wire that you work with so often. Um, Once we understand waste, we will be able to look at that cable spool or that chunk of waste on the factory floor in with different eyes with different eyes. It's not just simply we put it in the recycling bin or we put it in the trash bin. It's so much more. And so for me, these questions that you ask and these conversations that we have are help me with the awareness. And I'm still on that initial, my little tiptoe is poking through the door. I'm not in the room yet. I'm still coming in the door because every time I think, okay, I sort of understand it now, something else like the water smacks me in the face. There's so much to understand.
You mentioned the verbs of the course, that is the methane and so on. We've been to a factory which works with steel and they use acid, some types of acid, I don't know, to process the steel. I don't know exactly the process. It's not important. And they said, if we put solar modules on the roof, the acid gases will completely destroy it in a very short time. We have all the filters, but we know that it's still something out of there. And so we paint inside with a special color, with a special paint, so that the acid is not destroying the walls. And if we buy anything, any tool, it needs a special one not to be destroyed. And this was explained. So we ask, and what about the humans? And the answer was, humans have exactly the same acid inside their bodies in the digestion. You have it exactly this type of acid is inside. Nobody wears any protection gear. And they said even that was quite interesting. And I remember you at that moment. He said, I was in a COVID time. I was so the nose was filled and I cannot breathe properly and so on. And I went to this place where the acid is, and I breathed deeply twice, and I was healed. So I said, okay, so maybe you should not produce only the steel, you should have a hospital next to it, and the people just can inhale, and they will be healed probably. So which was a joke. But coming back to the steel to the waste image, there is one. It's not only the waste, but one of the principles is making the waste situation worth. And this is the principle. We touched it several times before. It is the fact that the volumes of produced and volumes of really consumed, it's so far from each other that, nothing or nothing. I do not, I eat meat, but a little bit. My body needs it simply, but I don't prefer meat. But we have 8 billion people living on the planet. What about having 8 billion chicken? But the issue is we had 8 billion in one country, or even in one city, or even in one farm. It's huge numbers which do not fit with the number of people. Nothing at all. Because everybody is playing in their own sandcastle, in their own box, increasing the volumes, considering that my chicken on the market will be sold because it's cheaper than the other one. This is so we push everything, the price of the prices in the volumes. And that's completely wrong, because if they will produce less, but they have a fixed and agreed contracts with somebody who will consume it. And I don't speak about shop generally. It can be with the farmer can have direct touch with the consumer. It's fine. Why not? We have internet, so we have a lot of things which can connect us. Then he can produce much less, which means he will consume less water, less resources, and everything. And there will be no waste in the process itself, because this we call it chains. We are starting to chain things. So you produce it, somebody will buy it, he will sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, and at the end, everything of this sell, resell, increase the price. And at the end, it's not fresh anymore. It's generally the price is so high that everybody complains. And at the end, it stay in the shelves of the store, because you have enough. You do not want a chicken tomorrow. But if we learn, and that's not in the past, it was common. So you cannot go in my country. You can go every single day to the shop, to the supermarket, and I think in the US is the same, and 24/7 in Asia, and so many stores. So we completely lost the ability to plan. I do remember my mother who went shopping for 1 week or 14 days, and she knows what she will do. And she did it. And it was great, but we completely lost it. So it's quite interesting, because frequently I'm asking in the stores, in the factories, okay, you have here a lot of goods, you need a lot of warehouses. For how long these goods are? And nobody can answer. Generally, they don't know. They know they need more place because they have not enough. But they don't know for how long, because it's not their business. Is the business of production or of the trade or whoever. It's not their own business. And I think this is one of the reasons and one of the answers how we can really get the waste out of the quotation, to communicate, to learn how to work together to avoid. So we've been to this factory today and we realized that we can connect this factory in completely different business, which they never expected to do, because they produce exactly the part which is needed in this business, but they never tried to offer it because it was somewhere outside, so they didn't care. That's the wrong part. So I think that if we really narrow the understanding and the connection, and we try to reduce significantly the chain length, and we stay with the power of touch, with the handshake, which is from consumer and producer on one line, it will have a significant impact, even on the water. Because you mentioned some of the examples in my keynotes. There is one more number related to water, which is that only California crude oil industry, despite the drought, consume every single day 347 million liters of drinking water, just producing the oil. So it's enough water to feed a city, big city, for a long time. But no, we consume it in one day. That's the issue.
Your comment on the planning, I made some notes on that because that's a very good point. And it's interesting that you remember your mother going to the grocery store for 7 days, and that's the way my mother did it. And she had it laid out, what the meals would be, and so on. Interestingly, she never kept a grocery list, um, but she did the planning. So we have now in the manufacturing world, we have these long supply chains, and I'm not going to speak against long supply chains because I believe that we are a global economy, regardless of recent events. But that introduces so many variables that is there any one person who is in command of all of these different, who fully understands all these variables? And I compare that question with the chapter in the book on the waste in healthcare, because I looked up how many uh, diseases there are in the world and how many uh, uh, drugs and other forms of treatment there are in the world, and how many different symptoms there are in the world. And when you take all of these variables and you multiply them together, it comes into the billions and trillions, and there is no way that any one individual, myself or you, as smart as either one of us is, or any doctor or anybody out there who has a command over that entire chain, which means that with improved automation and chat GPT and all of these uh, open source uh, resources that we are now seeing, it's my belief that at one point a doctor will carry in his coat pocket something like this. This is R2D2 in pocket sized, so that R2D2 can say, here are 5 questions to ask the patient. And based on those answers, they can say, here are 3 more questions. And then they'll say, there's a 99.9% probability that this patient is experiencing or suffering from this. And the 3 treatments for that are this, this, and this. But so they'll be able to juggle all of these different variables. Now, take that example and apply it back to the manufacturing with this very, very long supply chains, and the people in the plant, the manufacturing people are production people. They're not planning people. That's a different office over here. And what does that have to do with everything having to do with waste, including waste of the workers' time, waste of factories, waste of machines, waste of, right down to the waste of water and the waste of air, because we don't have command over this entire chain, which we cannot because we are mortal people. So that only gives me hope for the future because I know that the world is proceeding into the automation and machine learning and all these other areas that will allow us at some point in the future to have a 98% command over this chain, whether it's healthcare or food and agriculture or whatever it is. So one of these, and then the thought that that leaves me with is that the more I understand food and agriculture, the waste in food and agriculture, the more I'm going to understand the waste in education or the waste in healthcare or and so on. So I'm eternally grateful for these conversations with you because they open my eyes in so many ways, and I will continue to share this awareness, this ongoing increasing awareness that I have, uh, so that we can all, everybody that is watching out there, can think, what is waste? How do I help waste? And what is waste in the way that I'm learning? What is the waste in the way that I am raising my family? What is the waste in the way? And waste was never a word that I used 5 years ago. Well, I take out the trash. I try to recycle, which is a lie. Um, but but anyhow, it's an awareness. It's an awareness, and I think that that's what one of your strongest uh, contributions to mankind is raising the awareness on waste.
There was one interesting project I did almost 90 years ago. I work for one of the largest hotel chains generally in the world, so hospitality. And they asked me to share with them the information how to prevent waste happen in the kitchens and in the hotels and so on. And I came to one very interesting article at the time, or a study. It was a study already, where was written, and we tested after. In a restaurant, if you have to serve only three meals, and every single one is produced with three ingredients, you will need, let's say, 9 ingredients. Some of them will be same, so let's say 6. But if you change it to 10, you will need 60. And if you have a standard menu, which is in restaurants in Czech at least, you will need 600 ingredients. And I think you describe well the ChatGPT and artificial intelligence and all these tools. But there is one big issue from my perspective. We are considering in a business world, let's speak about the business world, but even in the education, that more is better. And this is this hunting for more. And this issue we project into the artificial intelligence and into ChatGPT, who thinks, okay, I will put more and they will have more. Or generally, it does not think. It acts like this. It's like math. 1 + 1 is 2, and that's fine. If it will be 3, it will be better. And I think that this is exactly the issue which we are implementing into the artificial intelligence, which should help us, but it should help us to reduce. But at the moment, we ask them, please help me to make more money, to make more products, to make more things. And I think this is the basic, very basic issue which we are trying to implement to teach the artificial intelligence, because the artificial intelligence does not do anything else than taking what we tell them and process it much more faster than we can. But if we put the wrong question, we get the wrong answer. And this is what the people in artificial intelligence do not understand. Some of them started to understand it, like the father of artificial intelligence, who left Google because he realized that it's out of control. So I think that it is so important to use it as a tool, but to be able, and this is about the awareness which you mentioned, to be able to define the request correctly. And if we do not behave correctly ourselves, and the artificial intelligence copy our behavior as a standard, so the result will be wrong behavior. It will be just faster and more escalated than we can do, because it can process it much more faster.
That's depressing.
It is. We have 3 minutes to go. So it has nothing to do, it's the same like with a single-use plastic bottle. There is nothing wrong about it. Wrong is our behavior, how we behave with the bottle. That we follow the instruction is single use, I throw it away after a single use. It's completely wrong. Completely wrong. It's just for the producer of the single-use bottle, because he will produce another one. And that's his business. It's not produce bottle which will be used forever. No. So it is depressing, but from very different angle, I will say, than the people think. Let's teach the artificial intelligence to do less. That will be great.
If we could teach artificial intelligence the concept of waste and the concept of enough, of thinking of enough rather than thinking of more, then they will find, artificial intelligence will find some very interesting ways to be happy with enough.
That's the point. And I think this is, unfortunately, the people who are working in artificial intelligence do not do this way, because their request, if they receive any request from any company in the world, the question will be, we will use it to make more. So the very opposite than it should be. We have 1 minute left, Bill, 1:40 or so. So what you would like to tell to the audience as the final words today?
How do we get the makers of artificial intelligence, like this gentleman that left Google? He's doing something now. What is he doing? And how do we get his attention? How do we get somebody who's familiar with the industry to have a discussion with us how we can teach programmers about enough rather than teaching programmers about more?
That's the right question. And I would like to ask every single one who is listening, please think about it. Think about this question and help us. Join us on the construction site, Wasteless World, because if we will do together, we will succeed. But because we have to end, so let me wish everyone have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, free, and visible, and don't hunt for more. Thanks a lot, and see you next week again. Bye-bye.